What's my cue to that?
You just let them know that you're going to call the meeting to order.
Okay.
And then count to 10.
We're going to count the
Quietly.
meeting to order. How's that?
Nice. It's well thought out.
I'm reading it off my sleeve. I wrote that line down. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Capital Improvements Committee, maybe at last meeting. Welcome, and to the members of the public. I hope we give you an exciting, entertaining, stimulating evening of important stuff. As we usually do, let's start by introducing ourselves. I think we started with Danielle last time, so we'll start with Joanne this time.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Ellen.
Ellen Markowitz, School Board Rep.
Gail LeBrec, community member and recording secretary.
Jim Raymond, you can tell I'm the boss because I'm running this.
Brad Parkhurst, community member at large.
Dan O'Connell, community member at large.
Tim Craig, Selectman Rep.
And Danielle Bosora, Assistant Town Administrator and Finance Director.
The real bosses are sitting at the ends of the table. What we're going to do tonight is see if we can wrap up our plan. We don't have to, but we can avoid another meeting. Does anybody have any questions on where we are thus far?
Can I interrupt? Did you want to approve the minutes
Oh.
before you get into it?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for, as I said, the real bosses are at the end of it. There are minutes before you of July 29th, which you've all had an opportunity to read. Is there a motion to approve by Ellen?
I'll move to approve.
Seconded by Gail?
Sure.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
Let me scroll out what happens after this, so that will help us form our decisions. We come out with a final matrix with the stuff in the, we can move stuff around, let's put it that way, the numbers that we've agreed to. Remembering we're not the budget committee or the school board or the select board, we're still CIP. It's presented to the planning board. We're really a subcommittee of the planning board with our recommendation, and the planning board approves it. And as I mentioned earlier meetings, the last few years they've adopted it. Going way back in time, they moved things around thinking they knew better. So at that meeting, when we present it, we'll have each of you have an assignment, an area to present, not in any detail, because you only have their attention. Planning board people aren't that smart; their attention span is limited, so you got to get through it quickly. But a few minutes. So, like, one of you will be public works, one of you will be school, one of you will, we'll just break it down. So each of you have a short presentation to make, summarizing sort of the main themes of that chapter, that group, not detail. And the planning board's heard this before, so you don't need to, but kind of the main goals, changes, the big areas. And for example, the school, the idea of bringing up to date technology is a constant theme. Doing routine repairs, you can point out some things, but you don't have to go into each one of them. So each of you are going to have an assignment to do that. I'll do an introduction, but you'll do most of the talking. We prepare a report, and it'll look a lot like last year's, because I'm not very creative, so we're just going to change the names. And that gets presented to the planning board, and also goes in the town report. So it's a sort of a permanent explanation of themes that we're trying to develop. So it's an important document, because the public won't read this, but they may, I'm sure they all avidly read the town report, but they may read it. And so it tells what we're trying to do and reminds them, I think this is important, of the planning that goes into the town and school budget. People don't see that. And we saw just Adam talking about how they deal with trash last week. It's fascinating. I think we throw things away, where they have this whole cost structure and sequence and equipment to deal with it. We want people to have a sense of that. So it's one of our roles.
Question, now this is one presenting to the planning board on the 9th?
Yes, and I have a question for Jim. That is the same night as the laundromat hearing?
Uh-huh.
And
what?
we have had that item first because of Mr. LaFond needing the interpreter.
Should we move the CIP to a different night?
We can, but I don't know when the selectmen need it by.
And I have a
When is
vacation in
planning
September.
next meeting?
So the next meeting
What?
is next week,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and then the one after that is the
the
9th.
first one in September,
Yeah.
because we still have, planning board skips its second August traditionally.
Do you know
Oh,
when
okay.
the selectmen were supposed to start looking at?
They're working through the budgets. The departments are gonna start presenting, but we've told the departments that have additional governing bodies that they have at least through the middle of September to get to their initial step with the governing bodies before they bring it forward. So when would it be if it were after the 9th?
So it would be
Is
the
it 2 weeks
second-
after?
Yeah, it would be the 4th Thursday in
I
September.
gotta check on when I'm supposed to be on vacation.
So that'd be like the
Let's
23rd.
let's decide this later, unless somebody else, or other people have conflict. That's gonna be a difficult planning board night because of the application. I don't,
Is that meeting at 6 or 7?
it's at 7 typically.
I'd rather not start at 9 o'clock.
No, so let's try to avoid that. So let me check, maybe,
Okay.
let me look on my telephone that I left in the car, of course, to see when it is. I'll call
Okay.
Jane, easier than
Okay.
find out. Okay, anyway, for tonight's meeting, well, I'm gonna go through the matrix, not in detail, but so a few levels of questions. One is for us to say, is there anything in the presentations that we disagree with? Let me give you an example. When Danielle was at Bedford, she experienced this frequently. Department chairmen come in and put in their department proposal of Cadillacs for the Public Works Department and the fire chief, so they can travel around in style. We have the ability to say, this isn't Bedford, we don't do that in Goffstown. Danielle, is that correct? I may be exaggerating slightly.
Slightly.
It's in the
Yeah,
charter.
yeah, we have that power. I think the boards, the department chairs are well enough trained that they've weeded out stuff like that. But if there's stuff of that category, we want to hear it from you, that you just don't agree with what was presented. Assuming that we don't have anything in that category, our next activity is really looking at timing and rating, where they're scored. And they really go together, because if it's a critical project, we want to move it forward to get it done. But our other goal, as we've talked about, is to even out the tax burden from year to year, given if there's some flexibility on where we bring those in. And if you look at the last page, we saw, especially in the earlier one, there were some heavy years and light years, and next year was a lighter year, which invites us to look at, I guess page 9, invites us to look at ways we could bring things forward so that this next year isn't particularly. Not that we don't want to give people a break, but it's a shock when the next year comes and people say, how come my taxes are going up? Well, they forget that they were low the year before. So it's worked, particularly where we know there are certain items that you just want to stay on schedule with, like road plan and vehicle. You don't want to make it an easy target for people to say, let's defer the road plan because it's too much money. We know that's how we fall behind. Let's create a few rules on how we go through these, though. And Danielle and Joanne and I have talked about this. Our preference is we not monkey too much with vehicle replacement schedules unless we think they're wrong, because they have a plan. And usually the department chair, the department heads know what that should be, vehicle police, for example. And if you say, oh, you can defer police for another year, there's a consequence, and we've learned that the hard way. Similarly, road plan, we've learned to defer that, it doesn't save money. So there are certain scheduled items we'd like to retain. So then you look at, well, what's left if we want to focus on? And there are a few items, and I've asked Joanne and Danielle to really identify those so we could focus on those. But that's not to say you can't come up with others. I mean, we work as a committee, there's no, you're all equally authoritative as anybody, but I thought it would be helpful if I had them go through and pick out some easy things that we could consider if we want to move, even out tax burden. And I recognize that some things may be more of a priority than the department heads want to say they are, because they've been beaten down.
Or less of a priority.
Or less of a priority, yeah. They've been beaten down a lot in prior years. Sometimes they're a little shy, sometimes they're too aggressive. And you have to, our role is to say, you know, move some things forwards or move some things backwards if we don't think. So, but why don't we, it's okay with everybody, have, and I'm gonna look more at Danielle, because she spent some time, pick out, identify the easy targets to see if that will, you know, we can deal with them, and then see what else there is. Jim?
Can I make a suggestion? If it's possible, if we all have to do presentations, might be helpful if we knew what we're going to be presenting.
Oh, no, I'm gonna
now.
tell you the moment before.
Oh.
Do you wanna do that
Well,
right now?
If it's already, I think I would pay more attention to what
Okay.
I'm going to present
Well,
on.
let's- we can either ask,
Work that way.
we
I don't know,
can,
it's just a suggestion.
we can either ask for volunteers, or we can suspend the 13th Amendment, and I'll just draft people. So, who would like to volunteer for a category? Ellen?
School.
Okay, that's a surprise.
Parks and Rec?
Okay. Which, since you have been.
Can I do the police department?
Okay. Are you taking this down?
No, but I can.
Why
I
don't you?
am.
Okay.
Our minute taker is, I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, Dan, do you have
Let's do the fire department.
a, okay.
That was gonna be my suggestion.
Jim?
I think the library said they weren't doing anything, so maybe.
I'll do the library.
What's left?
The chair has some prerogatives.
What's left? I don't know.
Please.
Okay.
No, she's
I-
You
got
did,
Please.
please. Public Works.
Public Works, admin,
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever
admin.
you want me to take.
Admin is important because of the, you know, the computer systems. And then police is a big one, so we gotta cover that.
So you got police,
I
I'll
got
do
police.
admin.
I mean, not police,
Works.
police, fire, DPW, yeah, I'm sorry.
DPW,
Yeah.
DPW is also a big one, yeah.
Yeah, the ones with a lot of hardware and iron.
I don't care either one. I'll do admin.
Okay, so who's gonna do DPW?
Cover everything.
1, 2,
DPW.
3, 4, 5.
Library admin.
That's you, you're the last one.
Okay.
Do you want to trade and do?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
PD and parks.
just a question, we probably don't have to do anything with sewer, well, we're
No.
gonna present,
Well-
but sewer is kind of self-funded.
Yeah, we'll mention that. Yeah, you can, you know, tie to DPW probably. But yeah, it's an easy one.
Jim?
And the planning board knows.
Do you want me, I'll do both if you want,
can
because
do
you're
both,
doing
too.
the intro and all the other stuff.
If you'd like, that would be great.
Okay,
Parks and Rec is not that big, you want me to do it?
you're doing Parks and Rec.
I know,
It's
but
not that
But
big.
it only has one project on it, is what he's saying.
Oh,
Yeah, let's let Brad do it.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so Brad's gonna do Parks and Rec and DPW.
Yeah. Ken?
no, I'm doing sewer, oh, DPW,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
which includes sewer, because that's an easy.
Yeah.
Now, again, these are short presentations, you know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You
An
just,
overall view.
yeah, you just want to hit high points, themes.
And typically, it's not like presentation slide style.
No,
It's
no.
just, they're gonna have a copy of the matrix, so you'll just kind of talk about a couple of the highlights.
Yeah, walk through the matrix
Yeah.
in category, and not in detail.
So, even though the library doesn't have a project on the slate for '22, would it fall under maybe when Jim is presenting for admin?
Yeah, no, I
Just
think
mention
that's-
that.
yeah, I
Because you're the
think that-
library
Yeah,
representative as
yeah,
well.
I think that should be Jim's,
Okay.
so I have to do it. So Joanne, do you have all that?
Yeah.
Who would we leave out, Ellen?
No,
No,
I have
she has
questions.
school.
Okay,
No,
so
no,
Jim-
not who here, but what categories do we leave out?
Oh, we
What
have
do we-
everything.
A question
Fire,
before we,
admin.
another question, is Kimberly gonna be available that night, or we don't know?
Oh,
We don't know.
We don't know, because we don't know which night it's going to be.
Okay,
If she is, we can unload some, like, DPW from you. Yeah, let's hold that as a Kimberly.
Okay.
She's a civil engineer or something of that nature, so she can,
true.
environmental engineer, so she can understand some of the talk. Okay.
Okay, we're all set.
Okay, good, thank you. Jim, thank you for asking that. I still rather ambush you, but
Jim, I want clarity, please. When you say look at this, we're not looking as to whether, we have nothing to say as to what's on here,
Well,
but
okay.
rather when it's on here.
let me, we can say something shouldn't be on here. That's a weapon in our arsenal I would use very rarely, if at all, other than the Cadillac for the DPW chair. Yeah, I'd like to think we can accept their presentations as capital items for which there is a need. It's for us to decide, we don't think it's a higher priority need, or it is a higher priority need, because that really takes care of the issue. But if you identify something that you really feel strongly should not be there, we can talk about it. The other category of things that we don't run into is sometimes things just shouldn't be in the matrix. But they've been pretty good at.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that. I just have two things that, just as a taxpayer, I'm having trouble.
Well, don't forget, we're not the budget committee.
That's why I asked the
Yeah,
question.
Yeah, we have to keep our roles separate. We look at capital needs. It's up to the voters in their infinite wisdom to decide if they really want fire trucks to show up in their house fire, or whatever, example, kids to have computers. That's not our decision. Okay. Danielle?
Okay. So, in the interest of being a little less confusing, I actually have a separate matrix. Because I didn't want to mess around with the printed matrix. This is the copy that was sent to you this week, which includes any changes that have been made by the committee thus far. So, we'll pass these ones
So
down.
call this one current.
These are different than this?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, so this one that's coming to you now doesn't have the vehicles, because, as Jim mentioned, the vehicles are already on a specific schedule, and they have a domino effect if we move them around too much.
Okay, so this one is as of 8/5.
Yep, so they're both as of 8/5, but this one here, you'll notice the yellow highlights. Those are the ones we're gonna be going over that may be able to move forward if we're trying to level out a little bit.
It says printed 5/26, but that's not true.
That's not true.
Okay, so
I
we'll call
apologize.
we'll call this one the pro forma, or the proposed or something.
Yeah,
But using that,
proposed.
that's just a way to distinguish.
What are we calling this one?
Well, I'm just calling it the proposed, but it's not final, but it's for discussion purposes.
Yeah, I had copied over the working matrix. So
Is everybody good on that so far?
the other point I'm gonna make on this kind of proposed one that has the yellow highlights is column I that you see about halfway through that says 2022 proposed. That does not match column L at this point because I wasn't sure if the committee was going to make the motions to move these items or not. So column I that you see there is essentially what is on the matrix as of the presentations being completed. And then column L is where I'm proposing some movement after talking with the department heads about what might be able to be moved forward or reprioritized.
Okay.
Okay?
When we three of us talked, and early in the week we talked, we wanted to make sure we're not arbitrarily moving items without the department chair's concurrence. 'Cause
Right,
they-
and there were a few projects identified that the department said, no, please don't move that.
Yeah.
So,
You remember, like, some of them require other work to be done or have staff short.
And they're linked to other things happening.
right,
Like
it could be linked to
DPW
other
as-
projects,
Yeah,
yep,
we
or it
can't.
could be linked to a funding source. We saw that with a couple of the
Right.
bridge items. It
So,
needs to be
so what
inserted.
you have here has been vetted by the
Yes.
departments, okay.
As well as the school.
As well as the school.
Okay,
Yep,
Okay,
yep, each presentation.
lead on.
So the first one we have here, I'm just gonna go kind of front to back so we can stay in order.
So we're using the new one you just gave me?
Yep.
Gave us,
The
okay.
the one with the yellow
I'm going
blocks
to talk
on
about
it.
the yellow.
Okay.
sure.
The yellow blocks.
Yeah, but my notes are on the, so now I gotta move the notes.
So, looking at line 112, Mass Road Station, that was proposed work the department had pushed out to 2026. And in speaking with the fire chief about that station, we think it would be a good idea if the committee supports it to put $50,000 into 2022 because there's additional facility maintenance that needs to be done in order to make sure the station can stay functional until a later date, as well as get into potential design and planning pieces of the project.
So, but the 1,550,000 would still stay in 2026?
Right, originally it was proposed as 1.6 million.
Okay.
And so we were just pulling forward a little bit of the funding to make sure that they can keep up with structural needs
So
to
this
keep the
is
station
kind of like
active.
preparation work?
Yeah, and planning and design
Right.
for that
And
facility.
maintaining what's status quo without...
Okay.
That would also give them a more solid number when they are ready to move forward.
So is it study or maintenance or both?
It's both.
Okay.
Yep, there's some structural items that have come up in the recent months that they have to evaluate. And so they kind of need the study to be done to figure out if the station is feasible long-term. And they might have to do some minor repairs as well at that point.
Dan?
So within our binders here, it says architecture and engineering planning is 91. So do we want to say it's 91 or we want to keep it at 58?
The reason we were thinking 50 was because it wouldn't necessarily be the full architectural scale that would come later on.
Okay.
This would be more of a feasibility and initial design, kind of a breaking that design and architectural piece into kind of two phases.
Dan's bringing up a good point by his example. He's looking at the sheets, which with the more detailed presentation, we really have to read the matrix and the sheets together and not get lazy, but okay.
I need a whole table.
Yeah, if you want to sit over there,
No,
you
I'm
may,
fine, I'm
because we don't have any.
We don't have a presentation.
Flipping all kinds of papers
So,
here.
so he didn't think he needed to break it down for pieces for 23 and 24?
Well, not
25?
yet. I think what we find out in '22, if that 50,000 is there, he'll start to get more information and a better plan, and he may then break the project down. And when he comes back next year, it'll be 23 to 28, and you might see some additional phasing.
Jim brings up sort of a good theme that we've treated the outlying years as really planning purposes, but less nothing's cast in stone, but less concrete, because that's a change from the old days when you'd say, oh, it has to be year 4 because we put it in year 4. No, we evaluate each year as needs change. So, but we try to target as accurately as we can.
Okay, even if we don't put it there, it could still happen.
Yeah, next year we could move it forward. Yeah. Especially if you're on the committee again.
Do we typically know how long that takes as far as their study would be concerned?
What do you mean, how long?
So, what kind of survey do they have to do? How long do they, like, for us to come around next year and then we understand how much time is needed to complete the project? And the actual number, I know it says 1.5, it could be 1.6.
It could be more, it could be less.
Right.
It all depends on what comes from the study.
Yeah, but
So-
I mean, in years past, for other projects, how long has that study taken?
It's completely dependent upon the building, what they find, the department needs, if the department's able to meet with those consultants, how busy those consultants are. So it's variable from project to project. We've seen some projects, depending on the scale, go really quickly through that process, and others have needed to take 18 or 24 months. It just kind of depends on.
But is it more likely than not that it would be done in a year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah.
so we might
It's
have.
more likely than not.
Yes, we're more likely to have usable information for next year's.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good question, thank you.
And this consulting would, besides the maintenance and stuff, they'd also look at ways for funding?
Not necessarily. This is usually the planning and design, so they identify what they think is needed.
Okay.
And they talk about potentially efficiencies or other things that the department might need to consider. And then funding is something that resides with the department head, finance, town administration, and the select board to try to figure out different options.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah,
We're talking about the fire.
just fire, yeah. Oh, okay, everybody good so far? We don't have to say yes, but is it still a candidate to
What
consider?
do they have that, what's its classification?
It's a
It's a 3.
but we've moved a portion. Three can be reflected, like we don't think it's gonna happen, or just when you, how far into the future we scheduled it. But by doing this, we're recognizing that in fact, it's going to be a bigger need at some point. So we should start planning for it now, even though we don't have to do it, the big project immediately. It's not a 1 or even a 2.
Right.
But at
And-
some point it will be.
Right, and rather than trying to take on the whole project, start to finish, it may be a good idea for, or good candidate in this case, for a project that can be started, get additional information that will help us really tone the numbers and figure out what's needed for the project.
Okay.
So the 3 is the overall project.
Okay, let's go down to 129.
129, that's the recycling building compactor that Adam spoke to you about last week. That one was proposed for 2023, and we think that would be a good candidate to move forward.
Again, we're moving it forward based on need. I mean, he said if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, we're in trouble. But also, we're trying to even out tax year. I mean, that was what I asked her to do. And he's, I don't want to do this just arbitrarily if there's not just a budgetary need, but if there's a need for the improvement.
Yes, and as Adam indicated last week, the compactor is such a critical piece of equipment that if you push it out and you wait until it breaks,
Yeah, then
you're in trouble for however long it takes to get something kind of piecemeal together. Whereas if you can take care of it while it's still functional, you can actually plan accordingly, get everything on site, and kind of do the swap out
Okay.
in a timely manner.
Everybody reasonably acceptable with that? Yeah.
We're moving it to 2022?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the committee going to take motions at the end of which items they want to move? That's
Yeah,
traditionally
I
what
thought
we've
we'd go
done.
through and get a big
Okay.
picture.
Okay.
But if there's something anybody violently has a reaction to as we go, let us know.
Yeah.
But if you think it's
an
reasonable,
option.
we'll take a vote at the end.
Can I ask a question? I don't know, this
Sure.
philosophical question. I'm looking at on page 2 of a new thing, and I think we determined that the tax portion would be line 139. Maybe this is for Danielle, I guess. And I'm looking at 22, 23, 24, and the range is from like 2,100 to 2 million down to
2.1.
1.8 million. Does that represent a great fluctuation in the tax rate?
It doesn't specifically, but keep in mind that that line 139 is for this department only.
Yeah.
So, but the same question can be posed for the totals. And you have to remember the tax rate is based, it's a mill rate, so it's based on per thousand.
Yeah.
So we can get, and we do in the budget process, get into predicting what that project cost is. But in most cases, you're talking about a couple pennies on the tax rate.
So we really should be looking at the bottom of page 8.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right,
we're trying to even out the total, not necessarily each department.
Right, I asked.
And we're on
Yeah.
Yeah.
line 132, is that where we're at?
We're about to, right? We just finished
Okay.
129 was the
Okay.
compactor.
Jim, you good?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So 132, the highway garage ventilation and fire suppression. That project was prioritized as a 2, but was placed in 2026 because, as the department indicated, that they didn't want to throw something in that hadn't been on the radar previously. But this would be a good candidate for moving forward because it is needed. And the work is being done by, it would be done by a company that specializes in this, so it wouldn't be pulling existing DPW resources off of road projects or something like
You
that.
remember Adam painted the picture of if this thing burns down, we are in deep
Yep.
doo-doo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the unhealthy environment we're creating, I just think we have an obligation to do that. And we have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, because it's very important that when we have a snowstorm, that those vehicles are ready to roll.
Yeah, Yeah.
And by putting them inside, it makes them ready to roll, but we don't want it to burn down.
Yeah, or the people who work here.
Right, the
Yeah.
people.
Okay. Everybody reasonably happy so far?
Yes.
Okay. Danielle?
Okay, so the next one we're looking at is on page 3, line 164. And that is the town hall parking lot repair. Originally, Derek and I moved this project to 2023. We were researching the use of funds. We have a clearer picture of that now, but also, as Derek indicated, the priority for us in admin was the 2 network IT-related projects. So the other 2 projects kind of took a back seat because we wanted to make sure that those were highlighted as the priority that need to be accomplished next year. But if there is room for movement, then we could move up both the parking lot repair and the 10-year flyover, which is the line, 2 lines below it, 166.
When's the last time we did this? 2012?
Well,
2012,
12.
so 22 would be the 10-year
Yeah,
anniversary.
okay.
There's an item before this that nobody's looking to move.
Don't know which one.
I guess that's not for CIP too. I'm having a difficult time, and don't get me wrong, I support our libraries, but saying that $6 million project is a 2
Yeah, okay.
strikes me more as a 3 or 4.
Yeah. But that's put off, well, we can debate that. That's put off for another year, and they don't really have a plan for it yet. So
Wasn't that at the request of the department?
I saw that as more of a placeholder.
Yeah.
So we
The
can,
department is actively working
yeah,
on plans.
we can debate that, but I'm not sure we need to this year, till we have more.
Okay, but classification of a 2,
Yeah, no.
you know, it's nice to have, but that's a lot of money for,
Yeah. Well, we can take a look at that. I treat a rating as where do we put it on time as much as anything. You can, you know, the lower priority, we tend to put them off. They don't really have a plan. Are they likely to have firmer numbers for next year?
They're hoping to, but they're still in their process. I don't believe they're gonna have numbers for the 2022 budget, but hopefully in '22 they will have firmer numbers for '23.
They're putting together a capital campaign, I think.
Right.
Trying to do all that
That's
stuff,
right,
and they're
too.
not off the ground yet.
I suggest we hold on that debate until they come back with call it a real proposal, because I'm treating this as more of a placeholder.
Are they working on the bond right now, or are they just?
Not on the bond yet, no.
Okay.
And when a project moves forward with the bond, it would go on the warrant article separately from all of the other budget and warrant articles.
So until it's approved, the bond doesn't come into play? Okay. I thought it kind of coincided.
Well, when they approve it, they'll appropriate fund. A town meeting appropriates money. That's really what it approves to do something. And the warrant article say to I forget the word I write these, but you know, bond this article. So it's part of the vote. So it really is. They happen at the same
They
time.
do happen at the same time
It's
at
part
the
of
town
same one.
meeting,
Yeah,
yeah.
to expend like $6 million and say, we'll name it in front of, in honor of Ellen, call it $20 million. And to raise those funds by a bond, you know, with the substance, it's all part of the warrant article.
Right.
Does the bond still need 2/3 majority?
60%.
60.
Well, SB 2 times it's 60. It would have been useful, I suppose, if we brought in some sample warrants, so you could see how the one they're talking about, and what they look like, but we'll do that. next
and
meeting.
in what year each one of these bonds could be proposed.
Yeah, yeah, you get the bond terms and stuff. Usually
Right,
bond
with
terms,
the interest rates and,
interest rate. It's hard to project, I mean, that's,
when they're planning their project, they'll let us know if they're proposing a 20-year bond, a 30-year bond, a 10-year bond. So that's part of why the numbers haven't been given a placeholder on the debt schedule, because we don't have a firm plan from the departments about the project.
Okay.
So,
Okay, and once we go through all of this, can we come back to the question that I have?
Do you want to ask it now before you forget it at your
That's
right
probably the
age?
best thing to do. I see the scale, this is DPW, so you gotta go back, line 131. And it may be interesting if it shows that 75,000 for 2025. And in the notes, it says the transfer station truck scale is for 2022. There's two different scales. I'm
Which
on-
note are
I'm
you
on- I'm on the
looking at?
minutes of the last meeting,
Oh.
on page 10.
okay.
Is that a mistake?
It's in 2025 now, it's 75,000.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading the
Yeah, I
minutes.
wonder if the minutes are incorrect.
They could be.
Yeah.
It's an easy typo.
Gail made a mistake once before, I remember.
That's just my question, that's all.
Let me double
Just
check
one.
actually the note that I
Yeah.
had on the department submission, because I believe the details came last week as well. Transfer station truck scale. It says the project was first proposed for 2022. And I think what he meant by that is the 2022 to 2027 CIP matrix. Because on his detail sheet, his submission form says 75,000 in the year 2025.
Okay.
This was one of those sheets we got at this meeting.
Yep, at this last meeting.
Okay. So Gail can adjust that.
That could be another project that could be moved forward.
That's why I bring it up, because I do know, this is personally, because I've talked to people there on occasion, that scale has suffered from the salt and the water. I mean, any of you who've been on it know that it's,
Well, let's put that on the
okay.
round 2 list. Let's go through the ones that
All right,
Danielle
Sorry, I
noted, but kind of highlight that in your notes and we can come back to it if we.
If I may, just one other thing, well, we've mentioned it a little bit, and we have a couple of them on here, that the items that are being bonded, and I don't know if it's for us, but if we're looking at bottom line, to not have them cost anything doesn't make sense to me when we're looking at the tax impact at the bottom line, because these are they're proposed and then getting wiped out with, oh, well, we're bonding it. But that bond has a cost every year, and that is not being taken into consideration when we're looking at the bottom line. And I don't know if that's us or sounds more like a budget thing, but it just bothers me that these huge number items are in here with no impact on the bottom line. And that's not right.
They're not reflected in our final,
No?
in our matrix, but they are in what gets presented to the other committees, right? That when they look at
Correct.
the annual cost of them.
Yes, so the other page that was handed out was the outstanding debt schedule. It's a single page. That shows items that are currently bonded. And it gives you a little bit of background of, you know, which project it was and what we're looking at for remaining bond payments. So as of right now, these are only ones that have been approved and are in process. And it shows what their annual impact is. So that's kind of where we see it, and when we go into the budgeting process, if a project is proposed to be bonded in that year, that dollar value will be calculated and placed onto this schedule as well as the budget and the CIP matrix for that year.
If I'm reading this correctly, this is the last year of the GHS
Of the high school
renovation.
bond.
that was
Yes.
what I was gonna ask.
That's correct.
And there's not much else that's being bonded right now.
Right, the fire station was the most recent one.
And that's a, relatively small annual cost. So in answer to your concern, Ellen, right now, we're just very low cost in bonding. But when you propose this going forward, if something is bonded, let's say the library, it would be a cost, yeah.
Ellen,
But it
But,
projects
and
it.
it's not being projected
Not
out.
here,
That's my
no.
only thing, is that it doesn't seem right that what's being proposed, and it's millions of dollars,
Yeah.
to be bonded, is not reflected in the bottom line on this matrix anywhere.
But it also tells us why we should focus on this next year and treat the outgoing years with less discussion, because we know we don't have a lot of bonding costs. And for example, in the library, they don't know how they're gonna raise that donation, so it's hard to plug in a number. But I think it does illustrate a point that outgoing years are subject to change when you start seeing real
And
numbers.
everything's subject to change,
Yeah.
really. I don't-
But this kind of tells us that, at least for next year, there isn't a lot of bonding costs, so we can not
Right.
have as big a factor.
And as far as the library, I mean, they don't even really have a set figure yet,
No.
so
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
couldn't possibly give you a bonding cost.
I'm picking on them as a easy target, but it's, yeah, let's say there were, I don't know, a bridge or something.
Quick question, Ellen, about the school bond, because this was before I came to Goffstown. When the school was bonded, what was the total cost of the project? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. And part
I was
of,
curious.
and you'd have to check with Scott, I know part of the debt for that bond gets paid for in a certain percent from the state.
Yeah.
Okay, so
There's
so it's not
change.
that much of that kind of a savings, because then we lose that
Yeah,
revenue.
yeah.
So there's more involved in it.
Yeah, and where we are in here, it shows tax appropriation for that payment, for that portion of the payment. So I'd have to check with Scott.
Dan had a question.
So showing how green I am, are most bonds 20 years? Or are they longer, shorter? Does it all depend on?
Depends on the project. 20 years is pretty common
Okay.
For a large
for a large
Yeah,
project.
because I'm looking at the fire station, it says 2016, and I noticed that 2036
It goes to
is when
20
it-
years,
right.
yeah.
So I just want to be sure, I didn't know if that went out any further, or just that's what we
Nope,
dropped
that's
in.
the end.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do project on here the full series. Did you have a question?
I was thinking of what kind of beer he's gonna get.
Okay. So,
So we're,
we were just looking at the town hall project on page 3. Were there any other questions or thoughts on those two potential
no,
projects?
those are fairly small ones in
Small ones.
big pictures, so,
Okay.
And those would be moving forward to 2022?
yeah.
Potentially.
That's where she showed it in the,
Because 2023 is the highest.
yeah.
It was the highest.
Yeah, so we're trying to
Yeah.
unload some of that.
And
The
just
parking lot itself, is it all of this, or is it just a certain portion of it?
Yep, it's the parking lot, it's the whole parking lot. There's the frost heaves and the
Yeah, no, I
the
noticed
sinkhole kind
I
of.
didn't realize there was a stream that runs under the parking lot.
Yeah.
It comes down behind the Congregational Church and
Oh.
runs underground and then goes out by Larry's
So-
Hardware Store. And when we had the Mother's Day flood,
Exactly, it
really
pushed
flooded,
a
yeah.
lot of things, and the
Along with
back
that.
corner of our building is actually sinking, so we have a structural engineer that comes out and evaluates that annually to let us know how
And
much.
it's running in a culvert, isn't it?
well, supposedly, but it was a pretty primitive, it's an old culvert with granite, remember that?
Yeah,
You know,
And we've had a few floods.
yeah. So when they did research that and found that town hall is sinking in that corner, and there's not a lot that can be done for it structurally, because they had to drill samples and found that there's nothing under there. There's-
Cavity.
Yeah, it's an empty cavity.
So where,
So get this meeting over quick.
We're not in that corner.
right where my office is.
It's yeah, under Joanne's office.
Okay, everybody go, keep going.
So the next one, line 180 on page 4, that's the centralized pool at Barnard. Now, that's one of those bonding projects potentially, but in talking with Rick, I asked him if it would be beneficial to potentially put some funding into 2022 for continuation of the feasibility study, design, to get a real hard number put together, to have those community projects where you'd be able to find out what it would look like, what it would cost, where it would be.
As the committee chair for a few years, I'd like that, because Rick has come in with a very nebulous plan for the last 3 years, and it hasn't been very useful. And you know, he's not a pool designer, he can identify a need, but it would be helpful for us to spend some money, so then we come in with a real proposal, you know, to really talk about. And you know, in terms of the amount of time and effort we're spending on the pool, talking about, I'd like to get somebody who really knows what they're doing. And that's not denigrating Rick, it's just, you know, a higher.
Yeah, it's a specialty project, it's
So I would
architectural
like to say,
related.
just to save us time and planning.
I'll
And,
just say my 2 cents. There's been no outreach from Parks and Rec.
That's because we
but
don't.
that's because he doesn't have
He
a
doesn't
plan.
plan,
If he
yeah.
has a design and a consulting company,
yeah,
then he
that's all-
can move
that's all-
forward with that
That's all part of
process.
the planning process.
Right.
But, so,
I would
But I know we-
respectfully disagree, I
Well,
think,
well,
because the
okay.
planning may not need to happen, depending on the public input.
okay, no,
Or the planning may need to be very different.
well, that's something to take up with the select board, because that's kind of beyond our jurisdiction and how he does
Okay.
it. But, you know, I recognize the political issues.
And he would still have to bring that to the Parks and Rec Commission for consideration to see if they would support, you know, moving forward with the next, you know, with a design phase. So,
Okay,
You've obviously discussed this with Rick because being on the commission hasn't been on the plate.
no, it hasn't yet because honestly, I don't know that he thought of it as an option prior. He was thinking, do the whole project, and he didn't know necessarily that there are pieces that could be done to better plan for that next
which
step.
illustrates my point.
So this is just similar to what we already discussed about for the.
For the fire station.
Thank you.
Yeah, same
And
idea,
then, you know,
similar
the
approach.
commissioners can address Alan's concerns in that process, because there are good ones, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't want this committee to be involved in that.
That's fine. And I have nothing to do with the pools. I'm just, if
Well-
something's gonna be proposed, I'd like to see it pass and
Okay.
not be delayed.
Yeah, okay, let's keep going on.
So the next one, there were a couple at the school. On page 5, line 205, the Media Center Computer Labs at Bartlett Elementary School. I spoke with Scott, and initially I was a little bit hesitant because technology projects are similar to the vehicle projects if you move them around too much. But in this case, the computers purchased for that lab were purchased in 2011, as Steve explained during the presentation. So they're already outdated, and Scott didn't see that as being an issue if that were to move forward a year.
Okay. Everybody good? Those of us who use
There were no
computers.
grants involved with these?
That one was under tax appropriation.
That doesn't preclude,
It doesn't
Yeah.
preclude grants
We're-
if they become available.
we're scheduling.
Oh,
when-
that's right.
We're scheduling when the capital improvement should be considered, but not, we don't determine funding
Right.
mechanisms.
And so the last one we had here identified was on page 6, line 225, door frame replacement at Glen Lake School. That's for the exterior door frames that were rusting. So originally proposed for 23 and 24, and Scott was open to the idea of it being 22 and 23 to phase that project in a little sooner. Again, not a huge ticket item, but needs to be done.
Okay. Is that it? Are those all the items?
Those were the ones, so that bottom line that you're looking at page 8,
Okay,
Shift.
this is gonna confuse Ellen, and not give her enough space, but get the one, the first, the current one, we called it, the first one she handed out, and then put the one, the proposed one we just worked, matrix we worked through. Get page 8 on the revised one, and I guess it's page 9.
page 9 on the,
And put them side by side, or what them another side by
Big page.
and look at the difference in columns L and M and end. It's really trying to move some items forward to column L, which is 2022.
So is I mean, it made a nice shift, but it's still, and I don't know if this is too much, I don't know, $900,000 difference. 22 to 23, did I do that
Yeah,
calculation correctly?
yeah, but you can see what we've done on
Yes.
just 22.
Yes.
It's jumped it up some, not
Right.
huge, but some. But you're right, there still is
Yeah.
an additional,
So a couple points there. If we move the truck scale forward, that would be another 75,000 that would slide from 23 to 22. So the new total for 22 in that case would be 4.245.
Basically make it 5
And-
even number.
Yeah. Actually, I think the truck scale came down, it wasn't in 23, it
Oh,
was,
sorry.
sorry, I misled you there, it was in 24.
what does Adam think about that?
He was agreeable to that.
Okay, is that something people would be,
The truck scale is 75K?
75,000, it would move it from column N, 2024, potentially to 2022.
and the gentleman on my right spoke favorably of that earlier. Which line is that, do you remember?
131.
It's 131, yes, transfer station truck scale. And it was listed as needed by the department in priority 2,
Yeah,
No, okay,
so it would move it
okay.
Move it
You said
forward.
131?
yeah, line 130.
20, $75,000 from 25
Yeah,
to 22.
22?
yeah.
Yeah. And
And we have to subtract 25.
from 2025, subtract 75,000 from 2025.
4203.
Add
What is that?
75.
Yeah.
For 2022,
Okay, so 2025 is a lighter year, but I'm sort of thinking about what Ellen said. If we're likely to bring in either pool or library or both, and there's some bonding costs, that could slip in there, so for tax
yeah,
impact.
just,
Yeah.
you know, for where we're at, and my brain tends to go
Yeah.
into the minutia of
Yeah,
budgeting, and I know
no,
that's not what we're
no,
doing.
No, but I think if we look at the early years,
Yeah,
Jim, am I correct that tax revenues have really not, they've held up? We're not, that's generally what we're
Yeah.
seeing in other towns, so it's not, despite the
so
predictions at the beginning
Yeah,
of the...
actually, last year we were concerned with COVID that the revenues would come in less. They actually came in at a higher rate than we've ever seen before.
I'm just saying that in other towns.
25
And
to
they-
22.
So people can't say
25
it's a bad year necessarily will, but they should. Dan?
Oh, no, I was just,
Yeah.
actually, well, I do have a question. So with 2023 still being off that, not off, I mean, it's still a large jump from 22. Is there any room to move some of these projects in the school up?
So, in speaking with Scott about the school projects, he was very hesitant to slide things around within the matrix as proposed by the departments, because they had placed each item very specifically based on what they could get through. And I think we're seeing that same concern that we've seen with the road plan before, which is even if you were to bond $20 million to fix all the roads, we can't possibly do all that work in that year.
No, I understand.
So, as well as the grants and the CRFs and all the other
Right.
different
The funding
revenues
sources.
that he had planned.
Let me propose also a different way to look at this. We're looking forward, but look back a year to the 2021 adopted budget,
I was
column
just
8.
gonna say that.
Yeah, we don't want to build too big a jump up from what was last year either, because people are going to say, wait a minute, how come you went from that to this?
Understood.
So I don't think it's a bad thing that, we ramp it up, knowing that we haven't evened out next year with the year following, because you don't want,
Okay, so that's putting it up, I think, by about, wow.
About $1 million.
About $1 million.
but, and I think we say the reason we've done that is we've moved some items forward because we know the next following year is going to be an expensive year. we provide it to the boards, the select board, school board, budget committee. They can say no, they'd rather put off. It's like, I'm not gonna fix my roof this year because I wanna save money this year and do it next year when it'll cost more, but that's their decision. We're just projecting a way to even out cost of capital needs with things that we think should be done.
Does somebody with, let's see, we have 2 big bonds, maybe, I don't remember, we have the pool, the possible library, and was there a third one?
Not yet.
Okay.
Well, the police radio, when that comes in, but that's probably not.
Not necessarily a
funded.
bond, they have it in here as a phased
Yeah.
project.
Okay.
The
I'm not.
The police station, if a
What
station were to move
year
forward,
is
then.
the voting on these bonds anticipated as being?
Don't know.
Don't know at this point.
Okay.
They're in here as placeholders by department request
Okay.
for 2023. They may not both make it to 2023.
I would-
They may be
I would guess.
24 or
I would guess they're
25.
another year out, basically, if they're not.
But together?
Not
Or not,
necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
necessarily.
we
together.
may want
I'm
to,
just thinking,
Yeah.
you know, if something is truly a need.
yeah.
I
Okay,
doubt that the town would go forward with 2 bonds in 1 year.
I would,
even though the annual cost may be not that much, but it's just hard to conceptualize. Okay, we've made some progress. Do we need to make more?
No, I just want to make sure we've taken that 75,000, moved, this is DPW, moved it forward to 2022. Thank you.
Well, none of it's officially been moved,
I
but I did in
understand.
our
That's-
calculations.
We have.
Okay.
Yes.
And-
Our proposal that
and
goes
the reason
forward.
is, these are needed items, and when we heard the presentations, it was items that should be done sooner rather than later, because if they fail, that's Brad's term, do, not mine, I'd never say such a thing. He said it a nanosecond ahead of me. And we think they're appropriate to do, and it has the goal of more evening out, providing less of a clip for the next year. Ramping up from last year, but one of the things we're trying to do is get the town to recognize the need for capital improvements on a schedule, not just postpone it. Is that a fair statement? Okay, any other changes that anybody wants to consider? I'm not gonna let Ellen talk about the library anymore. Or the pool.
I was like that,
Okay.
eating my lips.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the matrix as modified by this discussion.
So move it.
Oh, okay, I'll second.
I'm gonna let Ellen make the motion,
okay. I'll
and then
move.
Gail can second. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, abstentions, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. What do we talk about now?
So,
Danielle?
next steps, I will provide new printed copies without the yellow, with all the moves and the correct column headers and all of that. So I'll prepare that and I can send that out by email.
Yeah.
I'll pick mine up because I
We can
can't
mail.
Yeah, well, I think-
I can pick
I'm like
mine up.
Ellen, I gotta go pick it up.
Yeah. if we
I can pick mine up here too as well.
Yeah, and-
No,
Just let us know when it's available.
Okay.
Or if you can
Yep, you
grab
can put
it
it
for
in
the.
in your box.
a question now, I mean,
Can
we got-
I get it plain board?
we get this matrix, which we've altered to this matrix, which we've altered to the matrix that you're gonna do. How much of this do we need to retain?
Well, that was my next subject. When you're done with your notebook, empty it out and bring the notebooks in so we can recycle them.
The binder
The
itself.
binder, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll do that.
In other words,
We keep the final copies in admin and planning, and we move those forward in the budget process. So this binder is really kind of the working document that you had throughout the process.
I
Put it
just,
this way, I've kept my last 3 binders, never even looked at them, so.
well, I'm a great documenter, I have so many dusty binders and folders.
Yeah, but
okay,
if we
Dusty,
can,
you haven't needed them.
we can recycle these
When you
because they're
don't need
they're
'em?
really expensive. Okay, what else? You're gonna send out once you send out an email, just reminding us of the assignments, and then we'll figure out when we're gonna present it. And let people know, and if you can't make it that evening, just reassign it to Kimberly, 'cause she's not here to say no.
Like that.
Something like that.
Now, we normally make those presentations to the planning
You don't
board,
do arbitrage.
you know, at the beginning of the meeting, or is that what you're gonna determine?
We schedule a meeting, and we schedule it around,
Finance.
one, when it's good time,
We don't
for-
do that. We don't
and
have
two,
that
when
much
do the
Manchester used to do that.
the board, select boards would need this to start to do their budget work. Because they should be taking what we do and add it to their operating budget discussions, so that's why they need it sooner rather than later.
But that date is kind of to be determined now?
Well, it is because of just this thing is coming in, the planning board's gonna be unpleasant
Right.
experience if you have to sit through it, so
Yeah.
we don't want
Doesn't make any difference, I'm not going anywhere, so.
So we do or do not have a planning board presentation date?
Right now,
We do not.
We do
We
not.
originally had it, the date we had it, there's something else that's gonna come first.
Okay, it says
Yeah.
September 9th?
that September 9th,
Yeah.
It won't
so I
come
should
before-
cross that
Well,
out.
hold it until we figure it out.
So we confirm that we're
Yeah,
changing.
so either that probably or the next week. I assume we can't go beyond September.
It won't come before then.
That's up to the select board schedule.
Yeah, if they want to kick it off till
Certainly
October.
budgets are already
We-
starting. I'm
Yeah, the
sure.
budgets are starting, so I would really hesitate to see it go beyond September.
Okay, that's
Maybe you
fine.
can do it next week, on August 12th.
I'm on vacation.
You know, it would be a good meeting because
No, that's planning board meeting.
Yeah.
Right, that's,
Oh,
What do you think?
there's four
No.
items on the agenda and two of them are incomplete.
so it's going to be a shorter meeting. I know it's a quick turnaround, but in the case that the written report is something that you, Joanne, and I would work on
Yeah,
together. And then the presentations are more about,
I'd rather, do we need the written report for the presentation?
I have another meeting that night. The 12th.
on the 12th.
Mhm.
That's
What
it's a
time?
Thursday. I don't know if you need the written presentation do you normally provide that to
I
the?
do, but I'm just not gonna have time. I just-
yeah, that's not a lot of time to prepare.
No.
Right.
Let's see if we can put it off.
Okay.
But let's see what the last week in September, last meeting.
Okay.
What Gail mentioned, and I mentioned to Danielle, is that a week between meetings, especially if we're waiting for documents, sometimes or at least puts me in a bind, because
Yeah.
even though I'm retired, don't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, at midnight, I'm reading a report.
Yeah, let's not try to cram it in that quickly.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool.
Oh, do you want a copy of what we'd like to be presenting, each of us? I know a couple years ago you did.
I did, but now
Okay.
I trust you. You know, in vaudeville, they have those long canes and they pull people off the stage.
There you go.
Oh, my God.
I'll bring that to the meeting.
Okay, there you go.
If
Yeah, you
talk to
can't
Julie.
be more than 30 minutes.
Sure.
I wasn't thinking of how long, I was thinking of
How bad.
quality of content.
Yeah, no.
I think it's a snapshot.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
It really has to be. Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn,
I'll
Brad?
second, first it, whatever.
Okay,
Second it.
all those in favor, say aye.
Right?
Aye.